Good morning, everyone. Here is a 680 news report that says 4 men arrested after Montreal massacre plaque vandalized. And it says 4 men have been arrested after a memorial plaque was commemorating the École Polytechnique massacre was vandalized. Police say on December 3rd, the plaque in the lobby of the Scarborough Centre for Alternative Studies on Midland Avenue near Danforth Road was vandalized and damaged with misogynistic slurs. 4 days later, 3 of the men were arrested by police and the 4th was arrested the following day. Ahmed Siddo, 20, Mohammed Nana, 19, Abdullah Al-Molsi, 21, Adnan Al-Numeri, 18, have all been charged with mischief under 5,000. All 4 are scheduled to be in court on January 14, 2020. The 30th anniversary of the massacre that claimed the lives of 14 women was held last week. So this was a timely vandalization because the memorial was happening the same week, right? And here's the Our Canada Reddit post about it. And the reason this is news is because of the censorship. And we have slid into a society where we ignore it. I even ignore it. Like, it used to be that I liked going on Our Politics. I watched the WikiLeaks drops that basically got Trump elected happen on Our Politics. And that's when I started to notice the infiltration of the radical left and the people who will just shout you down until you stop fighting with them because they're never going to see your point of view because they're either paid or so round the corner they believe they've taken the Kool-Aid, right? They drank the Kool-Aid. They believe the rhetoric. So they're not going to agree with you. They're in fact just going to try and gaslight you into making a mistake that they can exploit and say, see, you're racist or sexist or whatever. But anyway, the censorship is multi-leveled because once they gain control by becoming moderators or whatever of the subreddit, then this happens. So here's the link for here's the link on Reddit for the story I just read to you. And here's what it looks like. It says, the only comments are unreal amounts of bigotry, permanent bans to be imposed. And was wondering when this was going to make it here. Would have thought it would have been a bigger deal since it happened relatively near the memorial date. Everything else has been deleted by the moderators, right? And this is a auto mod notification saying, don't call everybody from a province, blah. All Quebecers are blah. Doesn't matter. You can't do that according to the rules of Our Canada. But this is what happens when the moderators don't want you to talk about something. And what don't they want you to talk about? Well, here's the whole thing. Undeleted. This is a service called, well, it's not, I don't know whose it is, but what it does is it scrubs the Reddit and pulls the comments before they're deleted by the mods, right? So you can read through what was deleted. So what was deleted was the names of the vandals. And so the person quoted the article with the 4 names that I already read out, and I'm not going to attempt again because I'm terrible with names. I apologize. And it says motives unclear. And if you want to read through this, please do. It's interesting, the apologists. It's interesting, the people saying anybody who has a problem with this is racist, with this being the vandalization, or implying that maybe the anti-women slurs are a bad thing, or have something to do with the culture they come from, or anything. I mean, just read through. It's interesting. Like, either these are Canadians, or they're a well-orchestrated paid machine that is out to cover for what's happening in our country. But the censorship is the story here, right? I mean, certainly, vandalization is bad, and the implications of all of that, that's a story in and of itself. But if you were just introduced to Reddit, which is being billed as the front page of the internet, which in 2012, maybe. 2011 for sure. 2008 to 2011 maybe. But after that, it started to turn and be shaped and changed into, and I mean, Our Canada and Our Politics is a really extreme example. So much so that I think that it is not full of regular people. It is full of casual people who are not engaged with what's happening on the ground in our country. But fundamentally, just like the people in Our Politics aren't engaged with what's actually happening with the Trump presidency, right? Like it's so disconnected from reality. It can't be true. And so what do you do when this level of censorship is normal. And if you think this is unusual, I don't have a tool like this for Twitter, but my goodness, I wish I did, right? And Twitter's a bit more insidious with their censorship because they'll just hand out a ban, a 7-day ban or whatever, and then ignore you. They'll say, oh yeah, we'll get back to you in up to 48 hours. 2 days is an eternity when it is the public court of discussion, right? And if you're eliminated from that, well, you may as well be eliminated from that, not exist, right? It's scary stuff. And if you can't talk about something, if you're not allowed to talk about something, if the mods will delete it and everybody will go along with it, well, what can you possibly do to start to solve the problem? You can't. You can't even you can't identify the problem. The problem is X. Oh, you're racist. The problem is no longer X. The problem is now that you're racist, right? It turns things on its head. It's really, interesting is one word for it because of the implications across the board, but terrifying. There are examples in modern history of this kind of stuff being done to populations. And yet, we're ignoring it, right? Communism is not a good idea. It's failed while simultaneously killing millions of people multiple times over. Mass migration isn't a good idea. We can't talk about it. Not allowed. You're racist. Speaking of racism, here's a Huffington Post article published on the 12th that says, I critiqued Justin Trudeau's blackface and I was forced out of my anti-racism job. Sorry, the big black square. I tried to get rid of it, but it didn't work. Now, I don't agree with Miss Bain's point of view. She betrays the whole thrust of this piece midway through, talking about white supremacy and stuff and saying we can't meaningfully fight this white supremacy stuff if we're also ignoring the racism of Justin Trudeau and the hypocrisy of the patriarchy, basically, is what she says. And I agree. You can't have somebody like Justin Trudeau championing this anti-hate march to, I don't know, mediocrity, I guess. Everybody's the same, but the same has got to be, just tone it down, everybody. Everybody can't shine like a star. So, if everybody just dim and sits down and shuts up, everybody will be the same, right? I don't know. But you can't have Justin Trudeau championing these so-called feminism and women's rights and all this garbage when here's the reality of how he treats people who disagree with him or who point out his shortcomings. Here it is. I was forced out of a job as a program advisor in a federal anti-racism program because Justin Trudeau dressed up in blackface. When the news broke about the Prime Minister's history of wearing racist makeup, I was a senior program advisor in community support, multiculturalism, and anti-racism initiatives in Canadian heritage. I worked with a diverse mix of community organizations applying for anti-racism and multiculturalism program funding. I was shocked and disgusted when I saw pictures of the Prime Minister in brownface and blackface when he was a high school student, when he worked for a whitewater rafting company, and when he was a teacher at a Vancouver private school gala. A week later, my father and I were interviewed separately by HuffPost Canada on generational reactions to Trudeau's blackface scandal. My critique of the PM was mild and, if anything, echoed his own acceptance of blame and acknowledgement that his actions were racist. I was not identified in the story as a federal employee, but when I told management as a courtesy about the interview, I was verbally reprimanded. I was told repeatedly by senior leadership that I had broken the trust of my bosses, that I couldn't be trusted as a public servant, and that I would have to earn it back. I could not critique the Prime Minister publicly, even though I didn't disclose my job with the department in the article. This was something I could accept even if I didn't like it. Working in the federal government, you get used to accepting things within the bureaucracy. But then I was told by my manager that I would have to choose. I could keep producing my podcast and writing that I do in my personal time on issues of race, arts, and culture, or I could continue working as a public servant. I was told that to continue to do both could lead the public to think I was biased and lacking neutrality around issues of racism. Yet I had already cleared a conflict of interest process on that very issue before I was hired. But now they were changing their minds. At a later meeting, I asked why they didn't tell me I had to choose when I was hired or when I cleared the conflict of interest process. I was told that it was an oversight and that they should have looked more deeply at my outside work. It benefited the department to hire me, a brown woman, to work on their anti-racism program and promote their work. Having BIPOC, I think this is this is me quickly aside. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. And I think that it would be really interesting or just weird if I was an Indigenous person or a Black person or just a person of color and I got lumped into this BIPOC thing. Like if somebody was like, oh, you're a BIPOC, I'd be like, what? No, I'm X. I'm Black or I'm Indigenous or I'm whatever. I'm white. Doesn't matter, right? Like a BIPOC. I don't know what the hell that is. Heck that is, excuse me. Right? No, and it's just this weird thing. Like I'm going to insert this new language and we're all going to agree to use it. So this is where this kind of goes off the rails, right? So she's saying having a BIPOC, and just by using that, it grates on my nerves because, again, all of these new terminologies, you know what it is? Here's what it is. Somebody put it into, and I can't remember who the YouTuber was right now, but they were talking about transgenderism and cis women, and the person was being interviewed and said, I can link to the podcast, although I probably won't because I'm bad at that. Anyway, they were talking about, the two interviewers were talking to a non-trans activist, a traditional woman activist, and the traditional woman activist said, if I have to start putting modifiers in front of women to accurately identify that I'm a woman, that's not okay. Like, I am a woman. If a trans woman wants to, put that in front of whatever and identify that way, that person disagreed with that, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But the point was, adding all of these modifiers is fundamentally changing the language, right? And it's adding this, like, I'm a trans BIPOC person. And that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you anything. So it's just frustrating. Back to the article. Having a BIPOC person deliver anti-racism and official multiculturalism programs works to legitimize these programs and the overwhelmingly white department that oversees and creates policy about Canadian identity and culture. So in a backhanded way, she's saying, I am the BIPOC representative of the white department that oversees the Canadian identity and culture. And I think that that's just unbelievable. If a white person tried to pigeonhole somebody like that, oh, you're a BIPOC person. Oh, great. They would get absolutely pilloried. They would get completely demolished. But this person can do this under the guise of saying that Justin Trudeau led to my losing my job, when really she chose to lose her job because she chose her podcast over her career. That's her choice, not Justin Trudeau's. But back to the article. I understand now that as long as I remained quiet, docile, and stayed in my place, as a person of color, I could continue to work on eliminating racism in Canada. And when I did not remain quiet, remain obedient, I was seen as a problem that needed to be dealt with. This issue isn't really about Trudeau. It's about the price we pay for speaking up about racism. It's okay if we do it with a pre-described framework. We can talk about racism in terms of fighting overt, obvious displays of hate. We can talk about anti-racism as a lofty idea. We can fund projects that attempt to tackle racism in communities by holding discussion groups. That is to say, we can window dress it. We can play at pretending to fix the problem, but we can't actually do anything. And back to the article. But we cannot speak about whiteness and the everyday violence of white supremacy and white fragility and the impact on BIPOC. Instead, the system expects us to be quiet, calm, and obedient because if you do speak up and you are allowed, you will be seen as a threat. We're not supposed to speak up about actual racism when it happens. Like it just happened in the article here? Where are the examples of white supremacy or white fragility or their impact on BIPOC? BIPOC. So dumb. How can we address and dismantle racism when we can't even speak about it? It's so interesting how the lack of self-awareness this article shows. And it's incredible. It's incredible, right? Like her casual racism is seen as championing something or other. Here's another just wild, this is a wild news article. This is a news article from the Toronto Star. They printed it on December 12th. This is an opinion piece, I believe. And the author is this lady right here, Emma. And it says, Person of the Year Greta Thunberg is an easy target for insecure men who hate themselves. And I was reading through the article because I was going to include it just because I thought this is so dumb. Again, like the propaganda is so obvious and so dumb that it's just being shoved down our throats. And I think it's got to be done on purpose. This isn't a mistake. The article says, But it isn't just President Trump who has it out for Thunberg. It's a sizable portion of his base. There's a reason why he likes going after the activist. She's an easy target for insecure men who hate themselves. How else do you characterize human beings, most of whom do appear to be of the male gender, who cannot abide a teenage girl with strong opinions? Now, I was going to explain this, but really, the problem with Greta is she has no credibility, right? She has no credibility. She has no life experience. She's not a scientist. She's not trained in anything. So lecturing world leaders on climate change is her repeating talking points ad nauseum. Well, there's nothing that makes me angry about Greta. I feel sorry for Greta. The poor girl is being exploited by the people who are supposed to be handling her well. And, well, they're not. So that's awful. But this piece of news, this opinion piece, focusing on Donald Trump and his attack on Greta, has nothing to do with Canada or Toronto, the Toronto Star. Emma, get on topic. We've got a very, very, well, concerning structure in our government. Talk about that if you want to talk about government, not about Donald Trump. He's got very little to do with Canada other than with trade. And Justin Trudeau seems to be doing his best to blow that up. Here's the last story for this morning, and my goodness, I know this is a long video already, but I wanted to talk about this. They're trying to insert rationing as a good idea, and this story belies itself. It's not a good idea, not even close. Okay, I'm going to put this in another video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com and have a wonderful, wonderful day.